Hi, everyone. It's Miss Kearney. I have missed you guys, and I'm so glad that we are finally back and doing another station rotation. Just to remind you my expectations, I would love to see that you guys are taking the notes. So everything that I am writing down, you should be writing down on your paper. And if there is something that you have a question about, please make a note of it. And when you come to my station, you can ask me questions. So everything I write down, I want to see that you're writing down on your paper and you are following along. So first thing, just take a minute and let's read our learning goal. This is mini lesson 3, solving proportions. Very good. So our learning goal is that by the end of today, you guys should be able to explain to a friend how to solve proportions using different methods. So you're going to learn several different methods today, and then you can decide which one is your favorite, and then you should be able to explain to a friend how to do that. So before we get started, let's just take a minute to review the word proportional. If we're trying to figure out what are the ways to determine if ratios are proportional, we need to know what that keyword proportional is. And I'm so sorry I forgot to tell you guys, let's go ahead and write at the top of our paper that this is entry number 3. So you need to make sure that by the end of today, you update that table of contents with this entry number 3. So I'm right here on the notes. Proportional, that keyword proportional. What does it mean to be proportional? We learned last week that in order for two things to be proportional, their ratios must be equal, or there must be a common scale factor. So I'm going to give you 3 ways to determine if 2 ratios are proportional, meaning that they are equal. The first way is simply if 2 ratios are proportional, that means they are equal. So, one way is if the ratios or rates are equal. So, for example, the 2 ratios 2/4 and 1/2. Since we know that 2 to 4 is equal to 1 to 2, 1/2, that means that those 2 are proportional. So simply being able to look at it, simplify it, and see if the 2 ratios are equal. The second way to determine if 2 ratios are proportional is if their cross products are equal. That means if you cross multiply, you would get the same number. So our second way is if the cross products are equal. And this is a super important one, so I'm going to go ahead and star that because that's going to really come in handy later. We're going to use that a lot. So, for example, if you had the problem 2/6 and 1/3, and you wanted to know if these 2 were proportional, we can look at their cross product. So that means we could take and we could cross multiply. 6 times 1 is 6, and 2 times 3 is 6. So since 6 equals 6, that means those 2 ratios are proportional. Their cross products are equal. The third way to determine if 2 ratios are proportional is if they have a common scale factor. Common scale factor. So, for example, if you had the 2 ratios 1/5 and 5/25, can you think of scale factor means a number that you are multiplying by to either make it bigger or smaller. So can you think of a number that we multiply both the 1 and the 5 by to get the 5/25? So many of you are thinking that we multiply times 5. 1 times 5 is 5, and we multiply 5 times 5, we're going to get 25. So my common scale factor there is 5. So just to review, we've got 3 ways to determine if things are proportional. One way is to see if they're equal. The second way is to look at their cross product, so cross multiply and see if that is equal. And the third way is just to see if there's a scale factor. Is there something you're multiplying straight across to either enlarge or decrease the number? So those are the ways to determine if they are proportional. Well, if you already know that 2 things are proportional, that means you can use one of these methods that we just talked about in order to solve for a missing part of the proportion. So, for example, right here we have a problem. We have 6 over 10 equals 36 over x. We've got to figure out what value of x we could put there to make these 2 ratios proportional. So, if we know that they're proportional, there are several ways. I'm going to give you 3 ways that you can solve for that x. One way is you can use cross multiplication. And that's the way that we're going to use mostly today. Another way is you can see if there's a scale factor. So just look and see, is there something I can multiply straight across and use that same scale factor to determine the missing value? And the third way is I can use unit rates. I can figure out how much is it for 1, and then let me use that to determine how much it is for my missing value. So we're going to use 2 of these methods to solve this example. Okay, so the first thing is let's try to figure out if we use 6 over 10. Let's first try the scale factor. That's pretty easy one to do scale factor. So we have the problem, 6 over 10 equals 36 over some number. We've got to figure out what number would go there to make these 2 equal, would make these 2 proportional. So a lot of you are saying, look, Miss Kearney, we multiplied 6 times 6 to getting 36. That's my scale factor. The scale factor is 6. So why don't you come down to the bottom and multiply times 6? And if you did that, 10 times 6, that would mean x would need to equal 60. Okay? So that's using scale factor. Just seeing, can you multiply straight across and use that scale factor? Okay? The other way is we're going to use cross multiplication. This is the way that I really want you guys to use, okay? Now, I know that some of these problems are so easy that you can do them in your head. And I know some of them you can look at and you can figure out the scale factor and you can be done in 2 seconds. But what I want to see is that you are using this cross multiplication method, because later next week, we're going to get into some really tough problems that you're not going to be able to do in your head. And you're going to need to know this method of cross multiplication in order to solve for the missing value. So even though you can do it in your head, please learn this method with me and try out in all of the following problems. So here we go, guys. We're in that same problem. 6 over 10 equals 36 over x. So just a few minutes ago, we talked about that in order for 2 things to be proportional, their cross products must be equal. So if I cross multiply, if I take 10 times 36 and I get 360, and then I'll take 6 times x and I get 6x, since we already know these are proportional, we know those 2 things must be equal. So we've got to say 6x equals 360. We've got to figure out what value of x I could put there to multiply 6 times x to give me 360. So now you're going to solve it just like a basic equation. So we got to solve for x. So ask yourself, what's happening with 6 and x? They're being multiplied. So the opposite of multiplying is to divide by 6. So now x equals 360 divided by 6. We can just do 36 divided by 6 and add 0, which is 60. Which is exactly what we got up here. So we got the same answer, we just used 2 different methods. Okay? So now I'm going to do another problem with you using cross multiplication. Okay, so for example, number 1, we know in order to solve for x, we know their cross products must be equal. So 1 times x is just 1x, or x, and 2 times 5 is 10. So we said earlier that in order for 2 ratios to be proportional, their cross products must be equal. So that means that x must equal 10. Okay? Let's do one more, and then I think you guys are ready for some on your own. Okay, we're still using cross multiplication. So number 2, we're trying to figure out what value of d would make these 2 ratios proportional. So I'm going to cross multiply. 3 times 12 is 36. 4 times d is 4d. And we said that in order for 2 ratios to be proportional, their cross products must be equal. So 36 must equal 4 times d. We've just got to figure out what that value of d would be. So we've got to say 4 times what number would give me 36? I can do inverse operations and work backwards. So I can divide by 4, divide by 4. So that means that d equals 36 divided by 4 is 9. Okay? So just to recap, we know that 2 ratios are proportional if their cross products are equal. Therefore, in order to solve, you can cross multiply, set it equal, and solve for x. So now, what I want you to do is I want you to try the practice problems, and when you are finished with, let's say, number 3 and number 4, go and check the answer key and see how you did. And you can come to me with questions whenever you get to my station. Good luck, guys.